Hi everyone, my name is Nora and today I'm going to be talking about the student perspective on the flipped classroom. So last year I was lucky enough to try flipped classroom and here are some of my experiences. Just before I start telling you about it, I'm going to give you a little bit of context about myself. So I study computer science, and as a student I am in kind of a special position because I am visually impaired. And ever since I was a child, my vision was far below normal, and I was tested once to see how much help I need in a school setting. Then it was concluded that I would need a lot of help and a lot of adjustment to function normally in school and to follow the classes like everybody else. So after that examination, I got some things to help me, like some special lamps and some special tables that could be lifted up to see the book better. And I even got a binocular to see the blackboard. And needless to say, I was not very happy about this because when I was young, I felt kind of weird and nerdy enough as it was. And sitting in the first row with a binocular would not really make that better. So I always thought that in order for me to follow the normal school system, I would need some kind of miracle, like some kind of robot eyes or something like that. Lucky for me, what I needed was something much simpler, the flipped classroom. And now I'm going to tell you about 3 reasons why I think flipped classroom worked so well for me and why it would work for other students. So first of all, there are more sources of information in flipped classroom. What do I mean by this? Well, in normal education, there are mainly 2 ways to gather information. One is the blackboard and the other is the book. And if you're like me and you can't really see the blackboard, then you are missing out on 50% of the total information. And that is a lot. And remember how I said in the beginning that I am in a special situation? Well, this is not really the case because even though I can't see the blackboard because of my eyes, other students can't follow it because of other reasons. Some people have reading difficulties, concentration difficulties, and some people just learn in a little bit of a different pace than what is shown on the blackboard. And I feel like missing out on 50% of the information because of those things is a really harsh punishment. In flipped classroom, there are more than one way to learn the material and gather the information. Because what we had last year was that we had access to videos of the lectures. We did have some classes, really short ones, that showed things on the blackboard, but we also had forums where we could ask for help. And the best thing of all is that we had other students around to help us. And this is really good because when you have other people around, the sources you can get information from just increase in a way that you could not even predict, because what happens is that some person will say in the group, "Oh, I found a great website where you can learn the material from." Or someone will say, "Oh, I worked in software development. That was the subject I took. And I can help you with those things." So suddenly you get many, many more sources of information because of the people. The second thing is that in flipped classroom, there is more time for the teacher to give feedback. Now, before I had tried this flipped classroom last year, I was at school here for maybe 3 years, and never during that time did a professor come up to speak to some of the students. And this is understandable because the professor is holding the lecture and the students are kind of sitting in their own world, and rarely the professor has time to go up and talk to some of the students. I also got surprised when I came into university about how little feedback actually is given. Because sure, you get a grade, like you do well on a test or you do badly on a test. But for example, when you do badly, you never really get feedback on why this is the case. You're kind of just supposed to be a little bit ashamed and then do better next time. when I had flipped classroom, it was the first time that a teacher, Carl Frederick, he spent the lessons going up to all of the students and asking them, how are you doing in the group? Do you need any help? And I think that contact we had with the teacher was more valuable than if the teacher had repeated the same lesson as he does every year. And not only that, but we also get feedback from our fellow students that we are working with. And I think this is very good because we need people around to kind of correct our behavior and to help us become better. The third thing I really loved is that information in flipped classroom is more stored. I will explain this a little bit further. So in classical education, where you have the blackboard, I sometimes find it strange how the teacher goes through something and then he erases everything on the blackboard. And unless you took notes or there was a video, there is no real way to get that information back again. You can even, even if you have notes, maybe you were not really understanding how the teacher put things, and it's very difficult to go back to that later. I think this is a little bit like having a really great meeting where you discuss a lot of good things, and then after the meeting, you burn all the documents so they cannot be retrieved again. What happened in flipped classroom was that we were doing exercises every lesson. And I have maybe 20 exercises stored from that time. And now I can go back to them and look at them because I wrote those exercises with my group. And they are very easy to go back to and repeat the subject. So when I was preparing for going on jobs interview, I actually looked at the things that we wrote when we had flipped classroom. And this was the only subject where I had access to something like that. So I don't only think that flipped classroom is good in an academical sense, but it also is very useful when you're going to use that knowledge afterwards to go out into the real world. Thank you.